The following audio-supported podcast is intended for informational and educational purposes only and is not intended as medical advice. Please speak to a healthcare professional before making any treatment decisions. The guests on today's show were paid to participate in this podcast. You're listening to a special episode of Thal Pals, recorded live at the Cooley's Anemia Foundation, now Thalassemia Foundation of America, Patient Family Conference in Chicago. Please enjoy our first speaker, CEO of Agios Pharmaceuticals, Brian Goff.
So it is my honor, it starts to feel like a tradition too. I get to do this every year to introduce this very special podcast. And before I do, I just want to say a couple of words, reflections from this particular meeting. This is really special, and I think so apropos for the theme of today's podcast, All in the Family, because in many ways, this community has built up a family that clearly has momentum. And I woke up this morning thinking about favorite parts of the meeting, and I have to say, and Teresa, I'm looking right at you, the multi-generational panel yesterday with Teresa, Mary, Gia, Annika, it really affected me. I was watching it and thinking, this is it. This shows where we're headed, where we've been, and where we're headed in thalassemia, and how it really is a community, because you could see the support of each other on the stage. You could see the reflections of the journey that each individual has been through, but maybe most importantly, and Ralph commented on this too, the hope that exists ahead. And so I really applaud you, Teresa, and the rest of your panelists. We should give them another round of applause. And the second reflection is I had a chance to talk to several folks one-on-one, and not everybody with the journey of thalassemia has a family in the literal sense to help them navigate through thalassemia itself. And that's why this is so important, because what I heard from a few folks is CAF, now I should say TFA, is their family and is really, really important. People look forward to this meeting. It's kind of an oasis in the year, a chance to make new connections, compare journeys, and learn from each other. And so my hat is really off to TFA and all that you do. This has been a fabulous meeting, and it's just an absolute honor to be here. And I really am grateful that you invite people like myself from industry in to listen and learn. So thank you so much for that. The last thing I just want to say is, so here we have our Hollywood A-listers who need absolutely no introduction from me. Dr. Kevin Kuo and Nina Maria, how many of these did we say you've done? 30 or so? Something like that. And the one that happens here live is always very, very special. So I'm going to let them do introductions of our very special guest. And my apologies for turning my back to all of you. This is going to be a very special session, again, themed All in the Family. So let's give them a huge round of applause, and I'll turn it over to both of you. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Brian. Hello and welcome to Thal Pals, the Alpha Beta Revolution podcast, coming to you live from Chicago at the Cooley's Anemia Foundation Patient Family Conference. I'm Nina Maria Badalamenti with my co-host, Dr. Kevin Kuo, and lots of beautiful Thal Pals and friends watching live. It's been great to be in this space, this beautiful community. It's been a great conference. Today, we're talking about something that sits dear to our hearts with life with thalassemia, and that's family.
We will explore how thalassemia affects not just the person living with it, but also the household that surrounds them, the partners, the children, the parents, and caregivers. We'll also talk about stigma, support, and what families can do to better understand and show up for one another.
So we have two awesome families here, two patients with their families. So we'll let them go through, introduce yourself just with your name, your diagnosis if you have one, and your role in the family.
So my name is Medina, and I have beta thalassemia. I'm transfusion dependent, and I'm a mother, a wife, and an educator.
My name's Alexia Roberson, and I am her daughter.
My name is David Margerson, and I am Medina's husband.
Hi, my name is Radhika Sao. I have transfusion-dependent beta thalassemia. I'm a wife, a mother, a genetic counselor, and a patient advocate.
Hi, my name is Seema Anjali Sao. I am Radhika's daughter, and I am 22 years old.
Hi, I'm Dan, Radhika's husband. Nice to meet you.
Agios is a biopharmaceutical company that's fueled by connections with patient communities, healthcare professionals, partners, and each other. Building on these connections and the company's unmatched leadership in PK activation, Agios is pioneering therapies for rare blood disorders, including PK deficiency, thalassemia, and sickle cell disease. To learn more about thalassemia, visit rethinkthalassemia.com. To join the conversation with other patient allies, follow us on Instagram at Ally Voices Rising. That's Ally, A-L-L-Y, Voices Rising.
Well, it's great to have you all here today. And without further ado, let's get started. So first question is to Radhika. How do you balance being a wife, a mom, a daughter to aging parents, and a woman with thalassemia?
Very, very difficultly, but I try my best. Some days are harder than others, and I try to make sure I prioritize what needs to be done on that day. But it is, I'm not gonna lie, it is a struggle some days. But I really do try to take care of my family as best as I can. And I do lean on my husband and my daughter when I need to support. But it can feel sometimes a lot of hats to wear, especially as a female. We are the caregivers generally of the family. But I try to do my best to make sure everybody's needs are met to the best of my ability.
Thank you, Radhika. So Seema, I'm going to turn to you now. When did you start having an understanding of your mom's blood disorder?
So that, as far as I can remember, has always been a part of my life. If I think back to when I was in elementary school, I was always aware that my mom was just a little different than everyone else's mom. She's, I think, the best mom in the world, but also that she had to approach life a little bit differently, and our schedule was a little different than everyone else's, and there were things that would affect her. And so it's always been something that I've been aware of. My parents never hid it from me. My mom was always very open that she has to go for transfusions or she has to go for her cross match. And sometimes during the summer I would go with her. So I was always very aware, and I knew what was happening. And so I was never in the dark about any of that. And I think that helped a lot.
And as a follow-up question, has that impacted your relationship with your peers, with your colleagues?
So I have never found a reason that to be a reason to hide anything about it. I definitely didn't always talk about it when I was a little younger because there was the concern that would people understand it, especially young children. If you hear, oh, my mom, it's in a joking way, she'd call herself a vampire, but it was always something I didn't know exactly if I wanted to discuss with people, but my parents were always of the thought process that it's not something to hide, and if people have an issue with that, it's not anyone that we need in our lives. And so that has that's been carried with me as I've grown up, and my friends now, especially my inner circle of friends, are aware to varying degrees of my mom's condition and how that may impact my ability to do things when I say, oh, I don't know if I could do that because at least when I was at home, my mom has transfusion, so you can't come over or whatever. And they were always very well receptive to that. So that's how I approached it. I know everyone has a different way of looking at it, but I don't really let it impact anything. It's just another part of my life.
When you went with your mom, or when you go more when you were younger to her appointments and things like that, did it feel scary to you? Did it just feel like normal? What was that? What was it like from your perspective?
So prior to maybe 3 years ago, I want to say, she was going to a pediatric hematology oncology center. So And I was going to this place since I was a baby. I knew a lot of the people there. I had been going there longer than some of the people that most recently were working there. And because it was a pediatric center, it's a very welcoming environment. It's a very friendly environment. They would have little games and they'd have like the lollipops, and everyone was always very kind. And so being a child in that environment, I think, was really helpful for me, at least, because it wasn't like some big scary hospital. Whereas now, like, as being older, I'm more used to what a normal hospital looks like. So I think that was a nice transition that for the beginning, I don't know, 15 years, give or take, was in this very like fun, cute environment that made it less scary than it probably should have been.
So Dan, I'm going to put you on the spot now, and be careful what you say in the next couple of minutes. So as the husband of a superwoman, what do you admire about your wife's journey with thalassemia?
I think her desire to advocate for others. You know, I think some of the folks here know, you know, she grew up in a time where Ryan White, and those of you who know the story of Ryan White, so her parents felt that it had to be hidden. There are very, very few people in her family, very, very close folks, probably on a hand, that knew. But when we met, you know, I was of the opinion that, you know, she shouldn't be hiding anything. And so, but that took a little while for her to be comfortable to be open. But, you know, in the 29 years we've known each other, you know, she has become a fierce advocate, giving speeches for New York Blood Center. You know, anytime the foundation needs something, or, you know, any organization, you know, she's always there. So, you know, all of us that quote unquote are in a support role, you know, all we can do is support. We really don't know what it feels like. You know, you can see the fears early on, but I think as she has grown up, you know, she has become a very, very, you know, outspoken advocate for, and by the way, not just thalassemia, but, you know, anyone who's dealing with any kind of medical issues. A lot of people lean on her, both in our home, extended, you know, friends and so on. So that's what I would say.
It's beautiful. Bettina, we'll go to you now. We recently had you on a podcast episode where you explained a little bit about your journey and your diagnosis. You were originally diagnosed with non-transfusion-dependent thalassemia, which you were initially told you were the lucky one, which I think a lot of us know that's really downplaying that diagnosis. And then you recently have transitioned to being transfusion-dependent. What has that change been like for you, and how has it impacted your household?
You know, being underdiagnosed for 40 years and thinking that you are the lucky one because, you know, you're not having to manage complications or see a doctor regularly, and then transitioning to now where I am being treated and I am being chronically transfused. And it's just, initially it was very devastating. You know, it's like someone just pulled the rug from underneath my feet overnight. And so with that, it came just a deep emotional and physical and mental toll on me. And, you know, having to carry the weight of now being a patient with ongoing care was difficult. And so my family had to take on some of that burden too, in a lot of ways. You know, all of the feelings, all of the emotions, everything that I was struggling with, I shared with them. And, you know, it was difficult for them too, because we also, in addition to Alexia, we have 2 little children at home. And so having a family, just trying to navigate through all of this, and again, being completely just overthrown with emotion and feelings, and now this treatment, it was really difficult. On top of the logisticals behind it, you know, having to ask people to come help us with children and to be there and to go to appointments. So it definitely took a toll on us, but we just rallied together and we've gotten through it. But it was very hard in the beginning.
Hearing that experience is really eye-opening. As someone who's lived with transfusions, I can't imagine what it was like kind of transitioning into that lifestyle and, from something that you didn't know before. Going from, oh, this diagnosis isn't a big deal to, oh, it is a big deal to, oh, you need regular treatment. Has your perception of thalassemia changed?
And it's still very fresh. I mean, I've undergone treatment now for the last couple of years, but yes, my perspective has changed. In the beginning, I went through a grief process. I was bargaining in my head. I was in denial. I was angry. I felt all of those emotions, and to the point where I needed to seek outside therapy just to manage this, just to cope with it. And so for a while there, I was in a rough period of accepting this transition. But now, part of that grief process, you eventually get to acceptance. And I feel like that's where I'm at now. I've realized that thalassemia doesn't define who I am. It's a part of a condition that I do have. So that's been, it's been challenging, but I've gotten there. And I also really believe that building this community here with my family and with my medical team, it's made this a lot easier, and so it's not so much of this devastation that kind of overtook me. Now I'm more headed to a path of more hope and resilience. And so I can look at thalassemia and not have so much of that fear and some of that, I want to say, stigma that I felt in the beginning,
I applaud you for that. I think it's really beautiful how you've taken this journey and going through all of that. And now you're getting involved in the community, and it's been such a treat to get to know you too. So I think it's really beautiful how you've turned that pain into something beautiful.
Yeah.
David, I want to come to you now. What has it been like for you, just being her husband and part of the household, going through this transition, and how have you supported Medina through that?
So as she alluded to, when she was first diagnosed, we had known that she had thalassemia her whole life, but she didn't really receive treatment. So if you would have asked me prior to, learning all this stuff, I would have just said, oh, it just causes her organs to be larger, but she's fine. We had, no big deal. But then when she started needing treatment and kind of going down the path on what thalassemia is and all of the complications, the fortunate part with us is we live in the town that we grew up in, so our families are close, so we do have a lot of logistical support. What's been harder for me is, as she's going through and getting these tests and all of this stuff to kind of determine her treatment plan as she was getting introduced into this, was trying to be as sympathetic and understanding and trying to be supportive and, do all of the other stuff as well. So I feel like the logistical side of it was easier than really trying to make sure that I'm being supportive while also not letting, a lot of her advocating for herself was also kind of coming from a space where she can get, kind of paranoid about it. And so it was trying to be supportive, but then also kind of giving her the space to ask the right questions and do all of the stuff that she needed for her treatment.
I can imagine it's a lot to see someone you love so much go through all of this all at once, and also trying to kind of be the rock and supportive, and even though you're going through something too with her.
Yeah, it was a lot. It was a lot on our family. I think emotionally it was something that hadn't really been dealt with, and it just seemed like it was something in the background that was just during pregnancy it was brought up, but nothing followed up. So it almost was like, oh, it's not a big deal, right? It's okay. But then as she was getting more tests and had specialists look into it, it became a lot more complicated and overwhelming. So it was a lot.
as she's kind of started to navigate better and find a care team, find a community, and being surrounded by more Thal Pals and friends, has that changed for you?
Yeah, no, this experience has been amazing. Just coming this weekend was not only very educational, learning a lot from, but then just all the stories that people have and how they thrive in their lives. Not only gives us kind of an understanding of the abilities and the families that have been successful and the individuals that have been successful with this treatment. It really it gives us people that we can relate to, because I didn't know anybody who had it prior. I don't know that many people who have chronic illnesses or any of that type of stuff. So it's just a very unique and potentially difficult situation that everybody here rallies around each other to really support and help. And it's been amazing.
I think that's really relatable to all of us here, just how special it is to have this community of people and be able to connect in such a beautiful way and kind of create our own family with it. Alexia, you have a little bit of a different perspective than Seema, because you're kind of seeing your mom transition into this new routine, this new way of taking care of herself. What has that been like for you? Was there like a moment where you realized, oh, she has something different to deal with than a lot of people?
Yeah, I would say around 10 or 11, I would notice that she started talking about, more health concerns and blood draws and organs. And it was very strange. And I would go to school wondering why none of my friends were talking about it, or their parents. None of their parents seemed concerned about healthcare the way she was. So I started thinking, and I think that's when I realized, well, my mom is different from other moms. And I followed that up with, should I be worried? I mean, especially now recently, the way things have switched. I mean, I remember her leaving for a few hours to go get a blood transfusion, and that just blew me away, because I've never even thought about it. Like, you see it in movies, but you don't realize that it's real until it happens. And I think just overall, the change, it made me look at life differently. Whether positively or negatively, it just changed a lot of me. So.
Was that scary for you?
Yeah, because that's your mom. I mean, you don't know what's going to happen, so.
Feel better now that you've learned more and you've seen others like her?
Yeah, because honestly, I never had really thought about thalassemia being like something other people could have. I mean, it's just been only brought up in our home. So to hear that we were going to come here and meet all these people, it really shocked me that I'd see so many people living like how my mom lives and how I live. So yeah, it was wonderful. It's been wonderful being here.
Yeah, I really appreciate the comments from you, David, as well, because from a provider's perspective, we, especially providers for people with thalassemia, we see transfusion as an essential part of our care, so much so that I think we become desensitized, if I may say so, meaning that we understand, yes, there's the logistics aspect, we understand certainly the medical aspects of it, but the human impact, is seldom discussed. So I'm so glad that we're drawing that out, because I think this episode will be extremely informative for the care providers to listen. So now we're going to switch gears and talk about stigma. So I'm going to start with you, Radhika. Growing up, did you and your family suffer from any stigma that's connected with having thalassemia?
So I grew up in the 80s. So as my husband was alluding to before, it was during the HIV/AIDS era. And my parents came here as immigrants from India. And when they came in the 60s, they only allowed 300 Indians a year in this country. So we were a really, really small minority. And my dad just wanted to blend in. He did not want to make waves or anything. So when my diagnosis came at birth, he wanted, of course, to do everything possible to support me. But, it also was something he had not ever known about, despite the fact that thalassemia is really common in people of Indian descent. It was never spoken about. And so he kept it quiet, and my mom kept it quiet. And as my husband said, literally, other than them, the only other people that knew were my maternal grandparents and my one aunt, who was a doctor who had helped to get my older brother diagnosed, and her husband and 2 kids. That's it. No one else knew. And he was, especially when I was little, it didn't matter as much. No one really needed to know. But then when I entered school was when AIDS came about. And he's like, he was so deathly afraid that if the school officials knew I was getting blood, that they would not allow me to go to school. And as someone who was a proponent of education, that's how he came into this country. He was sponsored to do his engineering degree, and he understood how much education allowed him to thrive and to succeed. And he didn't want anything to stifle that. So no one knew. No one knew growing up. And so it was an interesting type of stigma that we kind of put on ourselves. And there was a lot of fear. Like no teachers knew, no neighbors knew, no friends knew. As I said, most of my family didn't know. So we only had each other to rely on. And it was a very lonely existence because I was not connected with the foundation then. And, things, of course, have changed now. I'm very open about it. But that only came true because of the support of my amazing husband and his family, who said, well, that's just a part of you. And if someone doesn't want to talk to us or be around us because of something you have that you were born with, we don't need them in our lives anyway. But I needed that push and that support from someone who wasn't my mom and dad to say that to me and to be so welcoming. That gave me the strength to say, okay, I can't fight. I have to push back on the stigma by showing people that, yes, I do have this blood disorder. Yes, I rely on blood transfusions, but there's no reason you can't be around me. I'm just the same as everybody else. So it was an interesting journey I've been on, and I'm glad that things are so much more better now and that people are more open. But it's still an issue in many parts of the world, and I was thinking about that I still have some family in India that have no idea I have this diagnosis to this day. And, I don't even know how they'd react to it. I'm not ashamed of it, but kind of a hard thing to bring up in regular conversation. Hi, how are you doing? I have thalassemia.
Exactly. So corollary to that then, who was the first person you brought up that you have a diagnosis of thalassemia outside of that immediate circle? And what took you to bring that up?
I think the first person I told might have been my high school best friend, but I didn't tell her until we were in college. And I can't remember what actually inspired me to tell her. It might have been actually, there was a guy with HIV that came to our college to speak and to talk about his experience with stigma. And at the end, I said, "Can I hug you?" And everyone's like, "Oh my God, you're touching him." And I'm like, "I'm not scared of you because that's how I feel." And then I think that inspired me to tell her. And the ironic thing is she got mad. She said, "How could you not tell me all this time? I would have come with you. I would have made, because I used to make excuses why I had to leave school early. I had a dentist appointment. I had a doctor's appointment. And I think everybody in my whole class thought I had the worst teeth because I was constantly going to the dentist, right? But she's like, "I would have been there with you. You didn't have to do this alone." And I think that started to break the ice and make me realize that, people aren't going to shy away if you just explain it. And I think I had to get to a point where I knew the words and I was a little more confident in myself. But now, I think that first step led to another step, and now I can't stop talking about it. So
we love that. Thank you so much for sharing that. I think there are aspects of your story that every patient can relate to. And I think we've all faced periods and moments of isolation. And part of that is fear. It's fear of what people will think of us and, society and ideas. But I think it's really brave and special, that moment that you do finally share with somebody outside of your circle. And I think almost always it's a good interaction, and it's a beautiful thing and very freeing, I think, to be able to just be yourself. And
yeah, it's like a weight gets lifted off of you every time you kind of share that with someone that you've maybe had a relationship with and just always hid that part of you. And when you finally tell someone, they're like, oh, that explains why you weren't here on that day. Or that's why you seem to be, was that why you were tired that day? Yeah, that was it. So it's like you can just be yourself. And I feel like for a long time, you had to wear a mask, or you had to be you were acting because you were hiding something so integral to who you are.
Yeah, and you do that for so long, it becomes like suffocating. Like,
absolutely.
Yeah, thank you for that. Medina, I want to ask you now, as an adult dealing with these new challenges, do you feel that stigma impacts your adult relationships?
Initially, I did. I kept it very close to the chest. I didn't share with anyone outside of my circle. Growing up again, being underdiagnosed, I didn't really deal with thalassemia, so to speak. And, from time to time, I did share openly with people that I had when I was older, but I didn't know very much about it myself. So I wasn't, ashamed or anything like that. But that changed when I started being treated, because now stigma did show up. There's this sort of shame sometimes you deal with, and the secrecy with stigma. And so I wasn't comfortable with letting friends know, or family know for that matter, because I didn't want to be perceived as someone who was sick, or someone who was frail or weak, or just needed ongoing care for the rest of my life, And so it was very difficult at first, but I knew I had to get out of that mentality and just move forward, because it's hard living in secrecy. It's hard living with shame. And there's nothing to be ashamed about, this is what it is, We can't control it. It's something we're born with, and we make the best out of the situation. And so slowly I started to talk to people that I felt very safe with. And I think another big part of that was I'll always go back to building the community. And for me, that community started by finding online patients, and that allowed me to be vulnerable and ask questions to other Thal Pals. And as I slowly began to build a community and find more information, it helped to break that stigma. And finding people and just sharing it with friends that care about me, I was able to just open up and be myself. And so now it's just like, I am in a lot of ways thriving with this, because I have connection to others. And there's people out there that really support us and just, want us to do well. And so there's just so much more hope and encouragement in our community. And so there's nothing to be ashamed of. There's no reason to keep secrets. It's fine. This is who we are, and we're thriving. So I try not to let that stigmas affect me anymore. They just don't.
That's awesome. I think it can be such an inner conflict of like, we know we're not less than, we know, we can do anything. We know, we're strong. But this like worry that other people won't see that, other people will pity us or think we're less than or can't, and it's kind of like breaking through that fear and really showing who you are. And then people do recognize like, wow, you are really strong. Wow, you have so much going on, and you do this with a blood disorder. Like, it really turns into almost a celebration.
Right. I think of anything, fast forwarding from, 2 years ago until now, I feel more hopeful, more confident. I feel like I've grown quite a bit. And so if anything, like I can take away a lot of positives from this disease too. You know, it's really helped me to be more compassionate, and for myself, for one, but even for others. So it's like just switching that frame of mind and trying to find the positives in situations that are difficult, because, you know, in the end, they will grow you as a human being.
So speaking of community, Radhika, as a healthcare professional, but also as a patient and a patient advocate, how do you think we can start diminishing the stigma? And how can we support the community as a whole?
Well, one thing I've tried to do in my personal career is I love to teach. I'm a genetic counselor, and I teach genetic counseling students. And every year for my students, and actually students at other programs, I give a lecture on hemoglobinopathies. So thalassemia is, of course, one of them, sickle cell disease, and others. And I explain about the condition, but I also include patient stories. And I make sure they understand what life is like. And at the very end, I say, I want to introduce you to someone who's living with thalassemia. And then I show a picture of myself. It's me. And so I think it's so important to have those lived experiences. And I love the fact when my students all go, wait, what? You have it, but you're with us all the time. How are you getting blood? And I want them to understand this is just one part of my life, and you can live with it. And I do that. I really work with our program to make sure they meet people with other genetic disorders, so what they read in a book comes to life. I think those lived experiences and having providers really try to understand life in someone else's shoes makes a huge difference. And that's why yesterday I brought my student with me. I'm like, you need to actually meet other people and with this diagnosis and see us doing the same things you do. And I think with providers, the more they just realize that getting treated is just one part of our life. We still want to do what everybody else does. We may have to modify sometimes because of, you know, our need to have treatment and our physical, maybe we have some limitations, but I think the more they try to just step into the lives and say, well, despite having thalassemia, you're also a mother, and you also have a career, and you also have, you know, you're a wife. So you have all these other things going on, so that when we say, I can't make this appointment, it's not that you're being non-compliant and you're being difficult. It's that, okay, you have a life too. How can we work together to make this successful and to have you thrive and to do what needs to be done? So I think the more medical professionals have that empathy through lived experiences and interacting with people, it makes a world of difference.
Radhika, I love that. That's so powerful that you take that to your students, and just how you allow them to see you as a person and then show them, yeah, and I have Thal. It's part of me, not me.
And yeah, that's when, Medina, you had said that, you know, you're fearful that people are going to look at you as weak and less than, and you can't do stuff. That's why I don't tell them in the beginning. I wait till they get to know me and they see me just as just everybody else, and they say, oh, by the way, I'm also living with a genetic disorder. Even with friends and family, I don't say, hi, my name is Radhika, I have thalassemia. I want you to know me first, and then say, by the way, I can't come to whatever's going on tomorrow because I have to go for my transfusion. Oh, that's right, I have a genetic blood disorder. Because I think more people just, the way you're going to have them understand is just make them realize it's literally just a part of your life, like going to work. Just one more part of it. And I think people don't always appreciate that because they don't know it. If you're healthy your whole life, you can't understand that. But just showing them that, no, just one more thing I have to do. So,
do you have any advice for other patients who maybe, you know, they have good relationships in their life and they want to kind of take that first step of, you know, telling someone that's close to them that they have a blood disorder, but they're nervous, like what maybe the best way to go about it, or just any advice on how to just take that step?
Well, I'm remembering when I told my husband the first time, and I was so scared. I was like, okay, we are getting so close. He's starting to talk about our future together. And I was really, really nervous. And I just said to him, like, I need to talk to you about something important. And before you go down this lane about rings and, houses and marriage and all this. And I think it's just to take it one step at a time and just almost take a dive in and trust that that person loves you and supports you for who you are. And they're going to, hopefully, if the relationship is what you think it is, they're just going to be like, oh, wow, I had no idea. And just simplify it and just use simple language. I was born with this disorder. I don't make blood cells appropriately, so I need transfusions to live. But despite that, I'm doing pretty well, and I hope to continue to do well. And say, do you have any questions for me? How can I answer your questions? And again, one thing that I wish we didn't have to say is that this is not catching. This is something I was born with. You cannot get it from being around me, because there is that fear that some people may think that. But I think it's just believing in that relationship and believing in the humanity of other people and not letting your fears totally overwhelm you, but one step at a time. And, once you do one, then the next one becomes easier.
Thank you. Kevin, I have a question for you as a provider. When it comes to, a patient and, we're talking about stigmas and perceptions, when you have a patient that's a child and you have, maybe two parents that aren't seeing eye to eye on maybe a treatment, maybe it's, maybe they qualify for stem cell transplant or gene therapy, and they have differing ideas. How do you, as a doctor, best try to support the family and the patient in making those decisions?
Wow, that's quite a question. In my opinion, as a healthcare provider, I feel that everybody sort of handles these sort of situations differently. It really depends on the personality of the provider. I myself see it as having two sides. On one hand, it can be very challenging, but on the other hand, it's great to see that the parents are engaged in the conversation, right? It means that they are seriously thinking about the treatment, not just sort of going along with it. Because the last thing I want to see in my patients and family members is that, okay, fine, doctor, whatever you say. Then that tells you that they're not truly engaged in their treatment. And I have doubts about commitment when I hear stuff like that. But when you hear people actually asking questions, talking about it, then you know that we have reached that stage of engagement, which is great. Then the next question is, how do we break the deadlock? Sometimes you see family dynamics coming out to the surface, and during these conversations. And I always remind myself and my patients and the family as well is that these are ongoing discussions. I'm not just going to hand you a bunch of pamphlets or a bunch of information and say, hey, go read them at home and then come back to me next time. That doesn't work. Because it's sort of the decision-making process is an evolving thing. And so we sort of draw that out bit by bit by providing objective information, but at the same time also taking into account of not just the parents' wishes, but also the child, especially if the child is an adult child. Often in thalassemia, and we know this very well, is that parents are still involved some aspect of the care despite the children have grown up. And the other way I sort of handle these situations is that I offer each and every one of them the opportunity to talk to me alone, because sometimes by doing a one-on-one, it sort of removes or dampens that family dynamics, which may be conflicting at some times and not inducive, so sort of to move forward to reaching a consensus. But by having that ability to do that one-on-one allows people to sort of process the information a little differently without sort of the pressure from the different sides. Yeah.
Thank you, Kevin.
But that's just how I do it. Everybody does it differently. I just want to say that. So back to you, Nina Maria. So when you were growing up, your doctors have probably told your parents that you would have limitations. So what sort of attitudes did your parents instill in you?
I love this question. I will never pass up an opportunity to recognize the perspective that my parents gave me. I'm forever grateful for it. So, I'm sure it was scary for them. Like, I never thought about it until I was an adult that like they had to go through this diagnosis process, something that they had never heard of or seen. They didn't know, I'm sure at the time in the 90s, like with a Google search, whatever they found was probably pretty scary. And, despite going through all of that, they never instilled that fear on me. They always just told me, this is just something we do. This is it. And something they always said was, everybody has something. Everyone's dealing with something. This is your thing. You have to get transfusions. You have to take medicine. You have to take a chelator. Do it. Take care of yourself. Make it a priority. But other than that, you can do anything. They never have made me feel like that I did have limitations or that there were things that I couldn't do or that I couldn't be normal. Anything that I wanted to do, they were like, yeah, of course. Well, they supported me in that. And with the addition of, make your health a priority. You can do anything as long as you make your health a priority, as long as you go to your transfusions, as long as you take your chelation. Live your life. That's it. Like, I never felt like I wasn't normal. And I think I'm forever grateful for that because I wouldn't be who I am today. I wouldn't be here. I wouldn't be as proud. I wouldn't have the career that I have if I thought that I couldn't do it. And they never, ever made me feel like there was anything that I couldn't do. So thanks, Mom and Dad. But I'll never not be grateful for that.
Thank you, Nina Maria. That's just amazing. Thank you. So we're drawing to an end now. Thank you to our guests today for sharing so openly. And also thank you to everyone in Chicago with Cooley's Anemia Foundation, now Thalassemia Foundation in America. Congrats. For being part of this conversation.
Yeah, it's been such a great conversation. Thank you all. I think we learned a lot. And, while a diagnosis is something that's given to one person, I think we've learned that it's really a family experience. And the more we talk about it, the more we talk about the realities of it, the stigma, the support, the love, the community, the stronger that we all become. So I think that's a wrap for us. For Thal Pals, the Alpha Beta Revolution podcast, I'm Nina Maria Badalamenti with Dr. Kevin Kuo, and thank you all so much for listening. Don't forget to join us on the next one.
See you next time.